What if the rarest secret of our species isn't buried in ruins or carved on stone, but hidden inside your blood? A mutation so unusual, it breaks the laws of evolution, vanishes across entire continents, and yet stubbornly survives where it shouldn't. Could this forgotten code explain how some humans outlived ice ages, plagues, and the collapse of civilizations, while others vanished forever? In 1940, doctors in Austria stumbled upon something no one expected: a missing protein in human blood. It wasn't a disease, it wasn't damage, it was simply gone. And yet, this absence defined nearly 15% of the global population, about 100 million people today. They called it rhnegative blood. By all evolutionary logic, it shouldn't exist. It makes childbirth dangerous, even deadly, without modern medicine. Before 1968, thousands of newborns died every year from Rh incompatibility. And yet, this rare trait refused to vanish. In some parts of the world, it's almost extinct. In others, it thrives in astonishing numbers. Why did it survive? What hidden advantage made this dangerous mutation worth keeping? Was it resistance to ancient diseases? A genetic fingerprint of Ice Age survivors? Or a map pointing to forgotten migrations along coastlines now swallowed by the sea? This is not just a medical curiosity. It's a survival story written in our DNA, one that links prehistoric hunters, medieval villages that escaped the plague, and even modern emergency rooms. Where O-negative blood is the only universal lifeline. You are watching Stone and Bone. Don't forget to subscribe before we unlock the hidden history written in blood. On the western edge of Europe, tucked between Spain and France, lies the Basque country, a rugged land of mountains, coastlines, and one of humanity's greatest mysteries. The Basques speak Euskara, a language with no known relatives, older than Latin, older than Greek, older even than the written word. But it isn't just their language that sets them apart, it's their blood. Globally, only about 15% of people carry Rh-negative blood. But among the Basques, the number climbs to a staggering 35%, the highest concentration anywhere on Earth. That's not just unusual. That's evolutionary defiance. Scientists like David Reich of Harvard have shown that Basque DNA has remained remarkably stable for at least 40,000 years. When farmers swept into Europe from the Middle East 7,000 years ago, bringing agriculture and reshaping the continent's genetics, the Basques resisted. They remained the descendants of Ice Age hunter-gatherers, living in mountain refuges when glaciers still covered much of Europe. Then came a shocking confirmation. In 1991, hikers discovered Otzi the Iceman, a 5,300-year-old mummy frozen in the Alps. When geneticists sequenced his DNA, they found surprising similarities to modern Basques. It was proof. These people were not a side branch of history. They were a living time capsule, guardians of genetic lineages older than farming, older than cities, older even than the pyramids. The Basques may represent Europe before Europe as we know it, carrying not just a unique language, but an ancient blood signature that somehow survived the harshest bottlenecks in human history. And they aren't alone. Scattered across the globe are other pockets where Rh-negative blood clings to survival, forming a strange map that doesn't match anything we thought we knew about human migration. When scientists map Rh-negative blood across the world, the pattern looks nothing like normal human migration. It doesn't spread evenly. It clusters and vanishes in strange places. In Western Europe, frequencies range between 15 and 30%, with hotspots in Ireland, Scotland, and the Basque country. In North Africa, the Berber people show levels of 10 to 20%. In Western Asia, certain Jewish and Arab communities reach 10 to 25%. But beyond these regions, the story changes. In East Asia, Rh-negative blood almost vanishes, dropping below 1% in China and Japan. In sub-Saharan Africa, it is almost absent, less than 0.3%. And then come the anomalies. Among the Blackfoot and Blood tribes of North America, rates climb to 10%. How did a genetic trait that barely exists in Asia show up in isolated native groups thousands of miles across the ocean? Mainstream history can't fully explain it. This is the Asian Enigma. Why does rhnegative stop east of the Ural Mountains, as if a genetic boundary was drawn across the map? Did natural selection eliminate it? Was there a population split so ancient that the mutation never spread eastward? Or could it be something more dramatic? Forgotten migrations that carried this bloodline across seas long before textbooks say humans could sail? Even stranger, rhnegative hotspots seem to trace coastlines. From the Berbers of North Africa, to the Basques of Spain, to remote Atlantic islands like the Hebrides, and even into the Americas, the pattern looks less like random chance and more like a breadcrumb trail left by seafaring survivors of the last ice age. Looking at this global map, where Rh- vanishes in some places and spikes in others, what's the most surprising region to you? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to see which part of the world shocks you the most. But the mystery deepens when we ask the most unsettling question of all. Why did this trait survive at all, when by all rules of biology, it should have vanished? Rh- blood is not just rare, it's dangerous. For women who carry it, pregnancy itself can turn into a life-threatening gamble. If an Rh- mother conceives a child with an Rh-positive father, her body may identify the baby's blood as foreign and attack it. The result? Hemolytic disease of the newborn, a condition that, before modern medicine, often led to stillbirths or infant death. Before the discovery of RhoGAM in 1968, tens of thousands of infants died every year because of this incompatibility. In evolutionary terms, that should have been a death sentence for the gene. Natural selection should have wiped it out quickly. And yet, it didn't. In fact, in places like the Basque country, it flourished. So why did evolution allow such a costly mutation to survive? The answer may lie in its origins. Genetic analysis dates the Rh- deletion to about 25,000 to 35,000 years ago, the heart of the last ice age, when small groups of humans were clinging to survival in frozen refuges across Europe, North Africa, and the Caucasus. For populations living on the edge, every child mattered. Yet the Rh- trait endured, which means it must have offered something in return, some counter advantage powerful enough to offset the deadly cost of childbirth. Archaeological clues suggest these challenges weighed heavily on early humans. Paleolithic cave art often fixates on fertility and birth, perhaps echoing the high stakes of reproduction in a world where survival was never guaranteed. The paradox remains. Rh- should have doomed lineages, yet it protected them. But protected them from what? The answer, scientists believe, may lie in the invisible enemies humanity has always battled: parasites, plagues, and pandemics. If Rh- blood carried such a heavy cost in childbirth, then it must have offered something equally powerful in return. And when scientists looked closer, they found a possible answer: disease resistance. One clue comes from a parasite you may never have heard of, but which infects nearly a third of the human population: Toxoplasma gondii. Infections often come from undercooked meat or contact with cats, and while most people never notice symptoms, the parasite subtly alters brain chemistry and slows reaction times. For ancient hunters, that could mean death. Studies from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases revealed that Rh- people respond differently to toxoplasmosis. Their nervous systems seem less affected, suggesting carriers may have been more resistant to this silent killer. History gives us an even bigger test case: the Black Death of the 14th century. Between 1346 and 1353, it killed up to 200 million people across Eurasia. Yet survival rates were mysteriously higher in regions with more Rh- carriers. Dr. Nicholas Wade of University College London noted that areas like the Basque country recorded lower mortality. and mathematical models suggest blood type may have improved survival odds by as much as 40%. Recent research deepens the mystery further. Genetic studies from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology found that populations with higher Rh-negative frequencies also carry slightly more Neanderthal DNA, around 2% on average. This raises the possibility that Rh-negative blood may not have been a purely human mutation, but partly inherited from our extinct cousins. If so, it could explain why it offered unique advantages in the harsh environments of Ice Age Europe. Whether from humans or Neanderthals, the result was the same. Rh-negative blood may have acted as a shield, a hidden adaptation that gave certain groups just enough resilience to outlast pandemics and parasites that erased others. The spread of Rh-negative blood doesn't match the out-of-Africa model we learn in school. Instead, it forms a strange pattern that hugs coastlines, islands, and ocean gateways. It shows up in the Berbers of North Africa, the Basques of Spain, the Islanders of the Hebrides, and even the Blackfoot of North America. What connects these groups? The sea. After the last ice age ended, sea levels rose more than 400 feet, swallowing vast coastal lands where humans once lived. Entire homelands disappeared beneath the waves. Doggerland in the North Sea, Sundaland in Southeast Asia, Beringia between Russia and Alaska. These weren't barren wastelands. They were rich, fertile regions where human cultures thrived for thousands of years. When the waters rose, those cultures vanished, leaving only fragments behind. Some archaeologists now believe that seafaring began far earlier than textbooks claim. Evidence shows humans were crossing seas to trade obsidian and stone tools over 8,000 years ago. If true, then bloodlines could have traveled just as easily as goods. The distribution of Rh-negative may be the genetic echo of those forgotten voyages. Survivors clinging to isolated refuges when their homelands sank beneath the ocean. This also explains the mystery in the Americas. How did Rh-negative appear in native populations like the Blackfoot, when it is virtually absent in Asia, the supposed migration route into the New World? One possibility is contact across the Atlantic, millennia before Columbus. While mainstream historians remain cautious, genetic anomalies like this are forcing scientists to reconsider ancient seafaring. Perhaps rhnegative blood is more than a medical mystery. Perhaps it is a breadcrumb trail, pointing to civilizations erased not by war, but by the slow, relentless rise of the seas. Civilizations whose bloodlines still flow quietly in us today. Throughout history, blood has symbolized more than life. It was tied to power, purity, and even divine right. Nowhere is this clearer than in the strange connection between Rh-negative blood and royal dynasties. The phrase blue blood wasn't just poetic. In medieval Spain, noble families prided themselves on pale skin through which bluish veins were visible, an appearance that some researchers suggest may have been more common among Rh-negative carriers. To the public, it became proof of purity and superiority. To science, it raises a question. Were these elites unknowingly concentrating a rare genetic trait? Recent genetic studies of Egyptian royal mummies shocked scholars. DNA markers in the lineage of Tutankhamun suggest Rh-negative origins, hinting that even in ancient Egypt, ruling families may have preserved unusual bloodlines. European dynasties, too, showed high concentrations. The Habsburgs, Tudors, and Bourbons all intermarried obsessively, keeping wealth and titles within the family. But perhaps, unintentionally, they also preserved rare genetic traits like Rh-negative. The obsession with royal blood wasn't just symbolic. It may have been pragmatic. In a world ravaged by plague, famine, and disease, families with subtle genetic advantages, whether resistance to infections or even differences in brain function, would have stood out as stronger leaders. Over time, entire dynasties may have risen, not because of divine blessing, but because their blood carried survival advantages. And here lies a hidden irony. The very inbreeding that helped preserve these blood traits also cursed royal lines with hereditary illnesses, from hemophilia in Queen Victoria's descendants to the jaw deformities of the Habsburgs. Power came with a price, but was rhnegative blood only about survival in pandemics and royal lineages? Or did it shape individuals in subtler ways, in how they looked, thought, and even sensed the world around them? That takes us to the next chapter. Beyond history and disease, Rh-negative blood carries whispers of unique physical and neurological traits. Correlation doesn't mean causation, but the patterns are hard to ignore. One clue lies in hair color. The gene variant responsible for red hair, MC1R, appears with higher frequency in Rh-negative populations. In regions like Ireland and Scotland, where both traits peak, studies show that as many as 30% of Rh-negative individuals also have red hair, compared to just 10% in the general population. But the differences may go deeper than appearance. Research from the University of California documented subtle distinctions in sensory processing among Rh-negative carriers. Some report heightened sensitivity to environmental changes, like sensing storms before they arrive, or reacting strongly to shifts in light, sound, or social tension. While skeptics dismiss this as coincidence, neurological studies suggest variations in the blood-brain barrier between Rh-negative and Rh-positive individuals may alter how the brain processes stimuli. For early humans, these small advantages could have meant survival. The ability to sense danger before others, detect environmental shifts, or read subtle social cues would have made Rh-negative individuals valuable members of their groups. Natural selection, then, may have quietly favored these differences, not for mystical reasons, but for practical ones. Some people say their senses feel sharper, or they notice things before others do. Have you ever experienced something like that? Share your thoughts in the comments. It'll be fascinating to see how many of us relate to this. Of course, myths grew around these traits. From psychic powers to alien ancestry, Rh-negative individuals have often been cast as different. But the truth is far more grounded. Natural selection may have simply preserved neurological variations that gave our ancestors a razor-thin survival edge. Whenever science leaves a mystery unsolved, myths rush in to fill the gap. Rh-negative blood is no exception. Some claim it's proof of alien ancestry, that extraterrestrials engineered a subset of humanity thousands of years ago. Others tie it to the lost civilization of Atlantis, arguing that scattered Rh-negative hotspots are the last remnants of its survivors. And in parts of Japan, where blood typing is culturally linked to personality, Rh-negative individuals are often treated as mysterious outsiders. These theories are seductive. They make Rh-negative blood sound supernatural, almost magical. But the reality is far more compelling, and far stranger. Genetic analysis shows the Rh-negative trait is not alien, but a natural mutation, a deletion of the RHD gene that occurred 25,000 to 35,000 years ago. It appeared precisely when humans were struggling through Ice Age bottlenecks, fighting starvation, disease, and extinction. The Atlantis connection? Pure myth. But the submerged lands of Doggerland in the North Sea or Sundaland in Southeast Asia were real. Entire human homelands drowned as seas rose 400 feet after the last ice age. Survivors carried their genes into refuges, and with them, the Rh-negative trait. And while alien ancestry makes for great headlines, the truth is more extraordinary. Rh-negative blood doesn't need visitors from the stars to be fascinating. It's proof of human resilience, a trait so costly it should have vanished, yet so valuable it endured. When we strip away the myths, we find something deeper. Not an otherworldly origin, but a survival code etched into humanity itself. And that code isn't just about the past. It's shaping lives right now. For all its ancient mysteries, Rh-negative blood is also a very modern problem. Start with hospitals. Just 7% of the world's population has O-negative blood. Yet, it is the universal donor. The only type doctors can use in emergencies when there's no time for testing. Every trauma ward, Every disaster response team, every battlefield depends on it. Yet because it's so rare, O-negative is always the first blood type to run out. The Red Cross warns that supplies can drop to crisis levels in a matter of days. Pregnancy remains another front line. In wealthy nations, RhoGAM injections, introduced in 1968, have prevented most deaths from Rh incompatibility. But in large parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, access is still limited. The World Health Organization estimates that around 100,000 newborns die every year from untreated Rh incompatibility, a staggering reminder that this trait still carries a deadly cost in the 21st century. And the story continues in unexpected ways. Recent research from Johns Hopkins University during the COVID-19 pandemic found that Rh factor may influence infection outcomes. Data suggested that Rh-negative individuals had a slightly lower risk of developing severe illness compared to Rh-positive. Just as it once shielded medieval villages from plague, this ancient mutation may still be shaping survival odds today. So, while some see Rh-negative as a relic of the Ice Age, the truth is far more urgent. It isn't just a quirk of prehistory, it's a lifeline and a liability in the present. A trait that hospitals depend on, mothers still struggle with, and scientists continue to study as new diseases emerge. Your blood type isn't just a statistic. It could be the difference between life and death, for you or for someone waiting on a transfusion tonight. Blood isn't just a red liquid flowing through us. It's a living archive. Every drop carries mutations, adaptations, and survival stories stretching back tens of thousands of years. Rh-negative blood, far from being a mistake of evolution, may be one of humanity's most powerful survival codes. It protected Ice Age hunters as they faced starvation and disease. It gave whole villages a fighting chance during the Black Death. It may even explain how some lineages endured while others disappeared forever. And yet, it also reminds us that survival is never free. For every advantage it gave, it exacted a cost. Newborn lives lost, dynasties cursed by fragile bloodlines, and modern hospitals still scrambling to secure enough O-negative for emergencies. When we trace the story of Rh-negative blood, we uncover something bigger than medicine, bigger than myth. It's the story of us, our fragility, our resilience, and the razor-thin margins by which our ancestors endured. So the next time you hear about blood drives or wonder about your own blood type, remember, you're not just carrying cells. You're carrying the memory of survival itself. If your blood could speak, what story would it tell? Was it shaped by Ice Age hunters who clung to survival in frozen caves? By medieval families who outlasted plagues? Or by the forgotten voyages of coastal peoples whose homelands now lie beneath the sea? Every drop in your veins is more than biology. It's history. It's proof that survival isn't guaranteed, but earned, carried forward by the narrowest margins of chance. Now it's your turn. Share your blood type in the comments below, and let's see how many carriers of this ancient code are watching right now. And before you go, hit like, share, and subscribe to Stone and Bone, because the stories hidden in our DNA are only just beginning to be revealed.